Alright, we're going to take a look at two more exponential equations. They end up kind of working like quadratics. So here I have e to the x plus 6e to the negative x minus 5 is equal to 0. And we're going to go back to something that we were doing at the beginning of the semester, which was we were going to factor out the lowest exponent here, which is e to the minus x. And what's going to happen is if I factor e to the minus x out of the first one, that's going to be e to the 2x. If we factor it from 6, e to the minus x divided by e to the minus x, that's going to give us 6. And then negative 5 divided by e to the minus x, that's going to give us negative 5e to the x. Okay, so that's what's going to happen with what we got going on there when we factor out the e to the minus x. So this one's a little tricky, but if you can work through the example a couple of times, maybe work through some in your book, it'll get easier. So we're going to factor out e to the minus x. That gives us e to the 2x plus 6 minus 5 e to the positive x. And I can always check by distributing. So if I multiply those two together, I'm going to get e to the x. Multiply those two together, and I'll get 6e to the minus x. Multiply those two together, and we'll get e to the 0, which is 1, and we'll just be left with a negative 5. Okay, which also makes this thing a little tricky as it's in quadratic form. So I noticed that if you double e to the x, and by double I mean square it, then you'll get e to the 2x. So if we let u equal e to the x, when we square u squared is equal to e to the x quantity squared. So you got power to a power, so you're going to multiply your exponents and you get e to the 2x. So rewriting that, that's e to the minus x, u squared, plus 6 minus 5u equals to 0. And we can go ahead and factor e to the negative x, u minus 2, u minus 3 equals 0. Set each factor equal to 0. So e to the minus x equals 0, or u is equal to 2, but u is e to the x, or u equals 3, but u is e to the x. Okay? Alright, now e to the minus x, graph of it looks like that. It's got a horizontal asymptote of 0. Doesn't cross that. 0 is not in the range of e to the minus x. So this has no solution. However, the other two we can go ahead and ln both sides. Remember, the ln and the e are going to cancel. So what we have left going on here is x is equal to the ln of 2, or ln x is equal to the ln of 3. Okay. So this is probably a little bit worse than the next example we're going to look at. The next example is a little nicer. It's a little easier to see what we need to factor out in the next one. So let's say we have x squared e to the x minus 5x e to the x plus 6e to the x equals 0. So the lowest power of e to the x is e to the x. So we're going to go ahead and factor that out, and we're left with x squared minus 5x plus 6 equals 0. We'll go ahead and factor. So we got e to the x, and x minus 2, and x minus 3. Then we'll set each factor equal to 0. So we have e to the x is equal to 0. And that one is going to have a problem because e to the x looks like this. Horizontal asymptote y equals 0. 0 is not in the range of e to the x, so that's not going to give us any solution. Or we can have x is equal to 2 or x is equal to 3. So we throw out e to the x equals 0 because that's never going to happen.